Before you start creating a training course or any kind of learning experience, one of the things that you want to ask yourself is this training at all? Because training is time consuming and expensive, and sometimes you create training and it doesn't actually get used. So you want to make sure that you're actually doing something that could be training. The best training is no training. And what I mean by that is if you can make something so simple and intuitive, people don't need training, well, that's much, much better than having to explain that thing to people. So one of the things to look at is the fact that sometimes there are things that you can do to the environment that make it so the training isn't needed. So for instance, let's say that there is some kind of clean room that people have to go into, and prior to entering the clean room, they have to wash their hands. So they think, okay, we need to make some training to deal with this situation. But what if the only way that the door would open would be if you washed your hands? If literally the hand washing station triggered the door opening and you had to wash your hands a certain way in order to get the door to open. That might be a way to completely eliminate the need for training in that particular situation. So basically making things foolproof. Now, another area that you see this a lot in is in software. Sometimes software really requires training. It's just the nature of the software. But in other cases, especially when there are very linear workflows where there's not a lot of decision making involved, it might be better to have someone walk through a step-by-step wizard. So there might be things that you can do to the software to make it completely foolproof, where you can't really go wrong as long as you just follow the prompts and it pops out the end. Then suddenly this is software that you don't need training on. So there could be job aids or posters or things that you can put in the environment that will help. Another thing that you can do is you can change the rules around how people perform a task or the way that they make decisions so that the decisions simply fall out the way that they naturally should or optimally should. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a little cake, let's say, and there's two people who would each like half of the cake. Let's say two kids. You can use the I cut, you choose method where you say to the two people who want to divide this cake between them, in order to make this fair, one of you is going to cut the cake, but then the other person gets to choose the first piece. This set of rules constrains people into an environment where the person doing the cutting is going to do their absolute utmost to get that thing right down the center to make it fair because they know the other person is going to choose first. It's just an example of how you could set up a set of rules that make it fair, that people won't cheat in this particular case. The thing that you want to ask yourself when you're trying to decide whether or not something is training, in a nutshell, you want to ask, what is the needle you're trying to move? And this is often an excellent question for executives. If you're sitting down with executives and they're saying, okay, we need you to create a course that does this. The thing that I always want to ask is, what data about the environment do you want to change? And it should be really well quantified. So they might say initially, well, we want to make the warehouse safer. Okay, well, let's look at that a little bit more deeply. What could we measure about the warehouse that would tell us that it's safer? Well, we want to reduce the number of workplace accidents. Okay, that's good. So if we can get a measure of how many accidents per month or per quarter happen, then we can say we want to reduce the number of workplace accidents by 50% within 1 year. Or we want to reduce the number of workplace accidents by 50% every year until there's no workplace accidents or something. As soon as you've got something that you can measure in the environment, in the organization, in the individual, that's going to tell you that there's possibly a need for training there. The other thing you want to ask yourself is, what do you need people to do? Very often, especially within an organization, there's something that you want those people to do. And more specifically, this is so often couched in ways that are not observable. So you might say for a learning objective or for a purpose for the course, at the end of the course, this person will understand a particular thing, or they'll know. A person understanding or knowing is not observable. You can't see it. How is their knowing actually affecting their behavior? That's the thing. You want measurable output of behavior. It's not enough to just, there's something different going on the inside of someone. They're actually acting differently in some way. And that's the thing that we can measure. That's the thing that we can observe as a real change in the environment. So make sure that whatever you're wanting people to do, make sure that it's observable, that you can actually see them doing it. So you got to sort of think through that process a little bit. Now, let's say that we have maybe several things to choose from. You want to pick the most important one and then ask yourself, why aren't people currently doing that thing? That's the need for training. That is what will tell you whether or not there's training.